Welcome to Broadcast to Badass. We're Kimi and Pua, digital media nerds and jiu-jitsu-loving business coaches, joyously obsessed with creating freedom for heart-led entrepreneurs. We're here to help you go from frustrated to fierce, from hustle to flow, from broke-ass to badass. Find out more about us at bledigital.com, and wherever you're listening, be sure to click subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Gundi Gabrielle, a.k.a. SassyZenGirl, loves to explain complex matters in an easy-to-understand, fun way. Her The Sassy Way When You Have No Clue series has helped thousands around the world conquer the jungles of internet marketing with humor, simplicity, and some sass. A 10-time #1 best-selling author, entrepreneur, and former Carnegie Hall conductor, Gundi employs marketing chops from all walks of life and loves to help her readers achieve their dreams in a practical, fun way. Her students have published multiple #1 bestsellers, outranking the likes of Tim Ferriss, Grisham, Elrod, and Liz Gilbert. We are so excited to have Gundi on the show today. So without further ado, let's welcome her to the podcast.
So we're so excited to talk with you today. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we've been looking forward to this conversation. We love the about you on your website. You have such a fascinating life. And so could you just kick things off for us by sharing with us a little bit about who you are and what you do now, and maybe then lead us to how you got to this place?
Okay, I will try. Well, first of all, I'm a digital nomad. That's the interesting part, meaning I travel and live wherever I want, basically, and run my businesses from my laptop, which is a dream I always had, and it's nice that it came true. So I'm an entrepreneur and an author. I have a brand called SassyZenGirl, and I've written 10 #1 bestsellers, and they're mostly beginner marketing guides. They always start the sassy way to social media marketing when you have no clue, or funny titles like that. So they're always a little bit laid back and funny and easy. It's more like a conversation than a dreary, boring thing. I also wrote an article called How to Chill with the M Word, M being marketing, since people are often really uneasy, to put it mildly, around that term. And I also write a travel series. And what I found is, and very quickly, fortunately in the beginning, that publishing is not just about writing books, but it is a phenomenal marketing method, marketing and branding, because you get such authority from being a best-selling author, which isn't as hard to do as it may sound. And you get subscribers on autopilot, social media followers. People are much more likely to hire you for consulting or coaching or buy your products. They feel like they know you already, and it's remarkably easy to do if you understand how it works. And so I felt lucky that I learned this right from the start of my entrepreneurial career, and then everything else sort of came out of that.
Awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. We have a lot of people that are in our tribe and listeners who are either just starting out or kind of shifting into the online space. And I think they're really going to be fascinated by your story and by just learning different ways to market that feel good. Because I think that's part of what triggers people, is that marketing feels, or even the idea of marketing feels salesy or sleazy. And people are trying to figure out their grounding around how to get their message out there and find the people that are right to work with them without kind of feeling this way. And it's kind of a myth, right? Like, it doesn't have to be that way. So what would you share with people who are just starting out or just trying to figure out how to, quote unquote, market their product or service in a really, in a great way that feels good to them?
Well, you're describing it perfectly, because it's scary, and it's only scary because you don't know what to do. And it's this mystery. No one ever tells you that. They teach you all kinds of stuff in school and in university, but no one ever really tells you how to do marketing. And it's this ugly word, which is, I call it the M word. And marketing is really just sharing the awesomeness that you are. and the awesome product or service, whatever you have. Like if you experience something amazing, you tell everybody about it and you're super excited, and that excitement is contagious. And in a way, you do the same thing here. And one way of doing is that's very important to really see the customer more as a friend and building a relationship over time. That's why giving free stuff away is so important, because they don't know you. And, you build that relationship, and you build it with the aim of having it being a long-term relationship. And one simple way to do it is, like I said, self-publishing, which doesn't have to be difficult or take months to do. You can write a book in 30 days or less even. A simple how-to book, doesn't have to be long, about something you know really well that is connected to your product or service, whatever you do. And it is such an easy way to introduce people to who you are, because once they've read the book and they like you, they already trust you. And that is the biggest thing. You don't have to do much marketing after that. You really just have to share what you do, and people will actually come to you. That happens to me all the time. I don't do much consulting, but people ask me all the time if I will do consulting, even though I don't offer it or specifically mention it, but because they're convinced from the way I write, or they like the writing. And I think we all have done that when we read nonfiction books, that we like the author and we would like to have them do whatever they do for us, because we don't want to do it. So that's one way, but it's really about relationship building, or as Gary Vaynerchuk says so beautifully, the best marketing strategy ever is care, and see how you can help people. And the other point, if I can add one more, is positioning yourself, like having a sub-niche, not go too broad, and first do the research and find out what people actually want and need, rather than just creating something and then thinking, oh, how do I sell it now? That's the wrong way around, basically. So spend a lot of time researching and finding in like blog comments and forums and so forth, what are people urgently, what is their pain, what do they need, what keeps them up at night, and can you provide a solution for that? Because then they will come to you and you don't have to do much selling in that sense, because you're providing the solution that they're looking for. Very different mindset, I think.
Love that. Yes. So when you talk about self-publishing, in some of the descriptions that we saw that you shared with us before, you mentioned the word autopilot. And that word really stuck out to us, because we're always looking for ways to work smarter, not harder, to automate things so that we can create more freedom in our lives. So you mentioned that when things are set up right, you can generate subscribers, followers, leads, all of these things on autopilot. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's similar to doing lead magnets on your website, except it is, again, if you publish it in the right way, a lot more effective. So one thing you can do is you can put a lead magnet in your books, and through that, if your books sell well, you will automatically get subscribers without having to do anything. I'm a big fan of passive income. Most of my income is passive, and I like it that way. And I like that I don't have to constantly hustle as you have to do much more on social media, which are important too, but that's a different thing. Another thing is social media is the same thing. I mentioned my social media at the end, and even though I haven't, for a while, didn't do much, now I'm picking up again, but you can't do everything. I still got constantly new followers because people like the books. They wanted to hang out. I have a very active Facebook group. I constantly get new members. I do nothing but having it and mentioning it in the books. That's all I do. Another thing is affiliate marketing. For instance, I have one book about how to start a blog. And of course, there's a few things that are affiliate products in that process. And it's very easy. You mention it. You don't pitch it. You just mention it in that context as a suggestion. And people are quite glad that they don't have to figure it out themselves and do the research themselves. So again, affiliate income on autopilot, much easier, much less expensive than doing SEO, for example, or ads. And same with clients or customers. I think a lot of people want to do coaching or consulting. When you write a book and you write it in a way that's very conversational, I think that's a very important key, that you don't write a dreary lecture, really, right? Mm-hmm. When you do that and engage people and they enjoy reading your stuff and they think you're really awesome and you really know what you're doing, and you don't have to be a top-notch expert to do that, you just have to know more than they do and explain it well and be easy to read, they will automatically come to you and want to work with you. And you can even mention it if you want to do coaching. You just mention it somewhere in the end of the book. Or even better, you mention examples from your work. Like if you do coaching and you write about some self-help topic, for example, then you can mention examples from your coaching practice of how whatever you do has helped a certain person. Or if you do marketing, same thing. Whatever you do, you can mention examples. And that is more convincing than anything. Stories always are. And then everybody wants to have that kind of success and they line up. I think that's a very common phenomenon that we all experience from the other way around as well. So books allow you to establish trust and authority in a way that I cannot think of any other way you can do that so easily. Because having that best-selling author tag in your signature, for example, or anywhere you mention it, it's just a big deal to most people. And you can funnel it basically into anything. I also funneled it into courses and other things. In fact, my books are sort of the beginning of my sales funnel, if you will, in many regards.
Brilliant.
So brilliant. Yeah. Like if you think about trying to clone yourself, like this is really a cool way to do it. And, we coach a lot on creating courses, as you said, to kind of fill the gap of having to be the one-on-one coach in real time, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a great way to, not trade dollars for hours and still provide a really high quality service. And a book is another great way to do that. And what I love about what you said, it's a very gentle sales process where people opt in. People read it voluntarily. Like you're not sitting there, taping the book to their hands and like taping their eyeballs open, right?
Yeah, they choose to.
Exactly.
They choose to.
Totally. And it's up to them whether they decide they like what they read and continue to read it or not. And what's so fun too is like you don't have to hear their yes or their no. They get to opt in and connect with you when they're done. And if they aren't happy with it for whatever reason, they're not going to like write you an email and be like, I really didn't like your book.
No, they might just leave a review, but that's the only thing they can do. But it's very, and there's a lot of respect there. If you do it well and people like your style, you are an influencer instantly. I mean, I'm not trying to overblow it, but it really is. Think about it. If you read a book of someone who is a best-selling author and you really like what they do, there is a certain respect there instantly without any reason really, but it's because you're an author. It's different than anything else, I think.
So cool.
What's so fun about what you said is you're like, oh, it's easy to write a best-selling book. And I'd love to like dig into that a little bit because I think there are people listening right now who want to write a book and have been wanting to write a book maybe for years, maybe for their whole life. And it sounds like really scary. I think writing a book is a big deal for people. And I would love for you to kind of shine the light on really what it takes to be a best-selling author and any tips that you have for our audience to just get started on this process.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing to know is simply that we're talking Kindle books here, which also have a paperback version if you want to, and you should. But we're talking about Kindle publishing on Amazon here, which is the biggest store in the world. So you're leveraging the power of that store, which is much bigger than your website could ever be, though that's important to understand. Also, short is the new long is a slogan. So short books do much better than long ones. So you don't have to write like 300 pages and go completely crazy. In fact, for your very first book, and you notice I say first, so it's not just going to be one, pick something that you know really, really well, where you just sit down and can basically write it down in just a few days. And think of it as an extended blog post. 10,000 words is perfectly fine for your first book. If you can do more, that's great. But beyond 25,000, a lot of people sort of don't want to read. It's too long because it's different when we read something online. And many successful Kindle books are between 10 and 15,000 or 20,000 words, which is not that much if you think about it. And if it's a topic that you know really well, that shouldn't be hard to write down. I'm talking about a how-to book, right? So that should take away the biggest fear. Now, the other important part is that you research and make sure it's a topic that sells well on Amazon, because not everything does. And you can simply look through the bestseller list and see what's trending within your niche. If there's something that keeps coming up over and over, then you know you have a trend and you can write a similar book. You just give it your own twist. Don't worry about competition. If you do the right launch, it's not a problem. It's more important that the topic is popular. And then it's important to have a very conversational style, as I mentioned a few times, kind of like a blogging style. I have a lot of just very short paragraphs, a lot of lines in between. It's not always finished sentences. It's funny sometimes. I play with words and stuff. And if that's difficult for you or new to you, all you have to do is record yourself or meet with a friend and explain whatever you're writing about. Explain it to them like a friend would to their best friend, right? Have fun with it, laugh a lot, just have the recording going in the back and don't worry about it. And then get a transcription service. There's plenty of them out there and they transcribe it. And then you turn that into a book. That's the super easy way of doing it if writing scares you. And also to get you to that very conversational tone and not to be too lectury and like go on and on, sort of. And then this is the basic stuff. And then there's a whole launch sequence, and it's basically part of it is Amazon SEO. So you have keywords. People know what keywords are, right? Like words that you rank for. Mm-hmm. Is that concept?
Yeah.
No,
yes.
Or should I?
Mm-hmm.
That?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
So you need keywords, and you want that's the same as with the blog post, and you want these tools that you can do the keyword research with on Amazon. It's very simple, and then you want to make sure you have them in your title and in your description, just like you would in any blog post. And then there's some backend keywords. So that's one important factor, so that you rank for those keywords when people search for them, because that is the key to have long-term success. It's not that difficult to have a bestseller launch, but to keep books selling is where a lot of people struggle. Mm. So that's a very important factor, to have the keywords and push the book the first week very hard so it sells really well. So Amazon keeps promoting it for you. That's the autopilot part. And then, of course, a good sales copy in the title is important, obviously, title and subtitle, and a marketable cover. So not a cheap Fiverr cover. Fiverr is great for a lot of things, but not for book covers. So that's something you should invest a little bit, to have something that's really awesome and stands out, especially in a tiny thumbnail. That's that. And then when you have your launch, you need reviews. So you need to get that set up. People you know, but might also go into Facebook groups and see of your topic, if people are willing to give you a review. Have that ready on launch day. And then you can schedule a number of promotions. There's lots of book promotions that promote books at a reduced price, like usually 99 cents or even free. If you're brand new, you might even do free promotions for a few days, because you will get a lot of downloads, several thousand usually. And in the beginning, it's most important that people find you, because they don't know you and they may not necessarily want to spend money right away on an unknown author, which is perfectly understandable, but they will take a chance on a free book or a 99-cent book. And then if they like your book, they will buy your future books. And that's the other key, to have a series of books so they keep selling. So you're repeating this process. And when the next book comes out, it helps selling the other books, because they all show underneath. And that's part why my books keep selling so well. People like them, then they see the whole series, and then they want to buy the whole series. And they do. And they tell me this. They even write it in the reviews that they bought the whole series because they like it. So it's simple stuff, and none of these books have to take a lot of time to write. But does that make sense when you keep launching, not just one book, the book you always wanted to write, but a series? And in fact, I wouldn't do the big book that you always wanted to write in the very beginning. I would go through the process first with a simple book, and then the next time it will already be easier. And then once you're really experienced in this, then you write the important book that you always wanted to write, because then you will be much more experienced in marketing it rather than the first time around. And it makes it also less scary.
Yes.
Even if things go wrong, which they always do, everybody makes mistakes. It's not that big of a deal. It will still work. And if you do this right and pick your right categories and all of that, having a bestseller is not difficult. It really isn't.
Wow, that is amazing guidance. So how often are you launching books on a regular basis? How if you do have a series in mind, what would you recommend in terms of spacing them out, your launches?
It depends. I had my first book 2.5 years ago, and then had another book in a separate and more of a travel series, and I was busy with other things. And then last year I wrote 6 more books in that series, and I wrote them within 2 to 3 weeks, which I would not recommend unless you really have the time to do it and the nerves to do it.
Yes.
And then I didn't for a while, and then I wrote another book, and I recently just wrote Influencer Fast Track, the most successful book so far. So if you can initially write a book each month, that's great, but don't get stressed if that's too much. You can also say one book every 2 or 3 months, for example.
Got it. And you mentioned not using Fiverr for ebook covers. What would you recommend?
There's several services in different price groups. One that I have used is 99 Designs, which you probably know, which is always this online competition. You can sometimes get really good covers. And if not, then you don't have to pay, which is a nice part about that. Influencer Fast Track came from that. And then there are other book cover services in different price groups. Archangel Link is one. They have really gone up in price. So I have a whole list. And it keeps changing too. I'm not saying that no cover design from Fiverr would ever be good, but I actually for fun just tried 3 different and they were all really terrible. And it is important. It really is. I mean, you sell a book by the cover. The cover and the title are the absolute key. If you mess those up, you will have a really hard time selling your book, no matter how good it is. It doesn't matter whatever else you do. You will have a bestseller probably, but it will sink to the bottom very quickly if you are stingy on that. And I know people are on a budget, but that's the one thing you cannot skip on. It's better to spend a little more and invest a little more because you get so much more back later on.
So good to know. I think for especially people new to this space, it's not like people are trying to cut corners, but we're just trying to figure out, what's the best way, what's the fastest route. So thank you. I think you're saving people a lot of time and money probably in the long run. I would love to talk about publishers. And, we read in what you sent us that publishers are not a good idea. And we would love to hear your thoughts on that and why you feel so strongly about self-publishing.
Well, first of all, it's about control. You give away your rights. Secondly, you make a lot more money usually if you publish yourself, as long as your books are selling, of course. But you get 70% commission. Or versus royalty, 70% royalty, which is a lot. You would never get that from a publisher. Plus, it will take about 1.5 years for them to actually publish it, if they actually publish it. The biggest problem is that traditional publishers will expect you to have at least 10,000 followers, subscribers, social media followers. They expect you to have a large following already. And they expect, and they expect you to do all the marketing. Even people like Tim Ferriss and Gary Vaynerchuk do most of their own book marketing, and they plan it out meticulously and see what works best to get it to number 1 on the New York Times and keep it there for weeks. Tim Ferriss, I think, talks about it in the 4-Hour Work Week, how he did that, and Gary Vaynerchuk has too. So that doesn't protect you from marketing. I think people mistakenly think that I just write the book and they will do everything for me. No, absolutely not. Unless you have become famous for some reason. Of course, then you don't have to. Or I know of one guy, he became the top writer on Medium and like the absolute top writer. And then they offered him a book deal for $200,000, I think. But that is the rarest of exceptions. Either that or you're famous, but otherwise they really expect you to do all the marketing. And even if you're famous, they expect you to do a lot of the marketing and use your followers. That's why they're willing to do it. And these days, the internet has given us so much control. Look at YouTube, which is a similar platform where we can leverage these gigantic worldwide platforms like Amazon, Etsy, Shopify, YouTube, and all these different areas, and can take matters in our own hands. And it's not that difficult. And even if you have a publisher, there's no guarantee that your book is selling. In fact, I know a few authors who have official publishers, and they may have been bestsellers when the book came out. But if you look at it now, you can always tell by the sales rank how well a book is selling. They're not selling. They're with traditional publishers. So they don't really care at some point. And it takes just as much legwork, but you have much less control. And they may even decide not to publish your book, and then you still sold them the rights to it. So it's not something I would ever consider doing, especially having seen how easy it is to do it yourself.
Cool. Wow, this is so much valuable information. Thank you so much. I'd love to just steer the conversation a little bit to your very interesting background. And you've, over the years, it sounds like, had these moments where you've really pivoted quite drastically almost into a different type of career or reinventing. You were a conductor, a musical conductor with your own music company. You went to medical school. You then you also did dog and house sitting and sort of began your nomadic lifestyle like that. So it's so fascinating to us. What causes you to reinvent at those moments? Maybe you can share with us a little bit about that and where that impulse comes from.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
Yes.
Well, it's music is what I basically grew up with, classical music, and I was a classical organist, pianist, and then also conductor, and had my own ensemble, and I did that pretty much most of my life. And at some point, it was time for something else. So that's where that change came. Medical school sounds funny, I know. I actually did, but I don't know. I had the opportunity. I liked what people at Doctors Without Borders did. It was sort of a transition period in my life where I seriously considered doing that, even though I have absolutely no interest in science, none whatsoever. I was also in my mid-30s at that point, which makes it quite interesting to go back to school. Actually, a lot more fun than it would have been in the 20s. The challenge of having to learn again, which I would not have appreciated in my 20s at all, was quite interesting. It was more of this sounds strange, but it was more of an adventure to do that. And I don't regret doing it. And I also knew very quickly that this is absolutely not a path I could do. But I did it for quite some time. I even did clinical rotations at Cornell, which was a partner university in psychiatry, which I was always found very interesting, but it would never be the right profession for me. And then I also had an overall life crisis about 3-4 years, 5 years, I have to actually count now, 4 years, I think, ago, where a lot of things happened together, everything imploded, and it was the darkest time of my life. I think many people have had times like that. It was quite scary. It was really, really bad. But it also caused a complete transformation and, in a way, a liberation also from thinking I had to live up to certain standards and I had done music, so I should keep doing it. I really didn't want to. I really wanted to travel and be free and just run a business somehow. I had no clue on how to do that. Absolutely no clue about marketing except for music. And this situation forced me, in a way, to do that. And you're right, I got into house and pet sitting. I still occasionally do that. That's not really a profession. That's more for traveling, because the nice thing is you stay in nice places and you often even get paid, but sometimes it's just in return for the stay. You have lovely animals around you, which I love. And I had the peace and quiet to find myself again and to regroup and without a lot of financial pressures. And the freedom to just go when I wanted to, which I always wanted, but I never, it's hard to break away from that when you have a steady career. It's much easier when it's taken from you, because you can finally, in a way, do what you always wanted to do. It may sound strange, but probably some people can relate to that. So that happened, and that went on a while. And I started traveling. I road tripped to all 50 states in the US. I even drove up to Alaska. Absolutely loved this kind of life and the freedom and the adventure of it. And then gradually tried to figure out how to make money online, as I guess I think everybody does. And came into a digital nomad group, and someone there was successful in publishing. So I learned from her how to do it, published my very first book, then how Sassy Way to Starting a Blog When You Have No Clue. Simple book, didn't take me long to write, but that book was an immediate success and helped me finance my travels. And then I got another farm sit actually in South Africa near Cape Town, which I thought was super cool. I didn't do any farm sitting. Other people that I just watched the dogs and had a lovely stay. So that was for a month. That was great. And then I got more in South Africa and in Botswana and then Australia and New Zealand. So all the countries I'd always wanted to travel to, magically a house had always appeared, which allowed me to stay there longer without having to, pay enormous amounts in hotels. Because back then I was getting by, but I wasn't making a ton of money yet. So this was a great way to travel. And it's nice to be in an actual house for a while, because if you constantly travel, that would get really exhausting. But that was always my resting point. And I could write more books. There's a kitty just walked into the room. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm actually finca sitting in Spain with 7 cats in a pool.
Oh, 7 cats.
And, yeah, but it's a huge property, so they're lovely. Cats are awesome because they do their own thing. Wow. Except right now she wants to participate in the conversation. It's so cute. Just,
wow. There's animals on our podcast all the time. It's all good.
Oh, good. Yeah. She thinks so too. She wants to say something. Very upset.
Our dogs think that they're the hosts of our podcast.
Yeah, and of course they are. And cats definitely take over. So I love hanging around animals. And so this is another reason why I love the house sitting thing, because you always have pets. I can't have my own because I travel all the time. But so you have other people's pets. And this has been a longer sit, so it's been quite nice. She's listening attentively.
Wow,
so
that's so amazing. Yeah, so
that's how this all came about. And then you kind of stumble into things and learn more, and and then this whole thing comes out of it sometimes. I love this sentence from John Lennon. Is I think the motto of my life. Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans.
Yes. Wow. Really. It's so cool. So do you, is it the pet sits or the house stays that sort of determine how long you stay in a country or an area?
It used to, at this point, I also sometimes just rent an apartment whenever I want to stay somewhere. You can always, for a month or two, or get a short-term rental, more furnished apartment. There's nice ones everywhere. This one was a longer sit just because of the situation here. And that was nice too, because then you have more time I created my course, I created a lot of other stuff, and then I just traveled for a whole month again, and will probably do more long-term traveling again in October or November. So it's nice. It gives you the balance in between, because traveling is exhausting, and if you constantly just travel, that would be really draining after a while. So it's
like
a good mix.
Need a vacation from your vacation when you get home.
Yeah, exactly. and actually being in a home is also different from being in a hotel, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think hotels it's funny because we used to do, so we've had a podcast before this one, and it was kind of a mishmash of whatever we had in mind at the time. There was very little focus. It was just really kind of fun and all over the place. But I'm like remembering this episode that we did about creating your ideal workspace, and how like this is just reminding me so much of the balance, right? Because a hotel can feel very almost sterile and not very homey, and yet your own home can feel almost too comfortable and be like a strange work environment and not really conducive to getting great work done. Right? So like house feels like such a beautiful like in between. And I remember we were talking in this episode about trying to make your house feel like a hotel, because when you go to a hotel, you feel like you're on vacation. And it's just so funny. Like your environment is a really big player in the way that you create sometimes. And someone else actually came on our podcast too a few months ago, and they spoke about the importance of kind of like radically changing your state and your environment to continue to remind yourself of what's real, what's a priority, what is important to you. And so I'm sure that this is a really big part of the way that you are successful, and, you know, the way that you create such amazing content in such, you know, huge volumes so quickly. And I would love to hear your thoughts on your creative process and kind of what this nomadic lifestyle, how this contributes to that, and kind of what your day-to-day looks like, and how, you know, choosing different places to go really kind of feeds your creativity and productivity.
Yeah, fun stuff again. I love fun stuff. Well, I probably mentioned the word adventure a few times, and freedom and fun is the third word I think I tend to mention all the time. I once did a test, and apparently those are my core values, which says a lot, I think. Also, when you say workspace, I never actually sit at a desk, except right now is because I'm plugged into the Ethernet. But normally I always find a couch or something comfy to sit and have a laptop. I think that's why it's called a laptop, to have it on your lap, not on your desk or something. So that makes a big difference in having a lovely place and scenery around you. And the houses usually have really nice places. So it's not not all the time, but most of the time I've been at really amazing places. This current one is amazing. The view and the peace here, the calmness. I'm a very solitary type, even though I'm very chatty right now. I love silence and quiet and all of that, so that works well for me, except music, of course, and movies. But that, I think the environment makes a difference. And for me, the thought of settling down and sort of then having an apartment to worry about all the time, that would be kind of, like a chain, which does not mean I won't eventually do it. I probably will, because you grow out of any period at some point. But yeah, I think that's what keeps it exciting. The way I like to travel is road tripping. I absolutely love road trips and the freedom of that. And you just go and see where it takes you. You have a rough plan, but it usually doesn't quite work out that way. And that's half of the fun. And so that is really inspiring again. And I tend to write usually about topics that I find at least remotely interesting. Not every topic in marketing is always sexy and fun, but you can make it that, right? I mean, SEO, but you can make it more fun and conversational. And what inspires me, I think, is thinking of my audience and how to make this rather tedious topic more fun for them. Because I remember, for instance, with SEO, I'm pretty good at that now, but back then, first thing I think I did was read Moss's Beginner Guide, which is an excellent guide. Nothing against that guide. It was just so overwhelming. Right? It was so much tech stuff and like, what the heck? I didn't know what they were talking about. And I sort of like, oh God, I couldn't even get through it. And then later I found another guy it was very successful SEO, but he was much more fun. He did it in YouTube videos, and he was sexy, he was funny, and he was also really good. So it was much more fun to learn that way. And I never forgot that. And so when I write the books, I want to make it easy for people too. Because this stuff is important, you should know it, but it doesn't have to be tedious and dreary. You can make it a fun conversation, and also how you can change other people's lives and help them to do what I did, or the things that I wish I would have had when I started, where it was more difficult, and you put it together. Like this new book, Influencer Fast Track, I would love to have had that book when I first started out, and someone just lay it out in these simple steps, and that's really how it works online. I learned it over 2 years. Over a period of 2 years. And so that helps too. And then the other thing that's really inspiring is Facebook groups. All you newbie entrepreneurs, that's one thing I would strongly recommend you do as soon as you have a following. Start a Facebook group, not a page, that too, but I would really focus on the group, because the group is interactive. And it's not just you interacting with people, but they interacting with each other. And in my group, it's very active and very cordial, and everybody helps each other. And I always greet the newbies, and then there's like 20 people writing welcome underneath, and it's a very warm and friendly atmosphere. And so they also connect amongst each other and invite each other on their podcasts. And meanwhile, you build a bond with them that you would never have from just the books or just from email. It just can't be, because on Facebook, you see each other every day. And at the same time, it's not intrusive. I go maybe once or twice per day. I go in and see what's going on or post something. But it's not as intrusive as email, which you couldn't do daily, for example, or other social media, which is a lot of work and a lot of algorithm. And in my case, again, I use the books to drive people to the Facebook group. And that has worked really well. So that also inspires you, because then you actually know the people that you're writing for. Mm. And that's another fun and inspiration as well. And
right. It's a two-way conversation too, right? Exactly. Rather than email or something. Yeah.
And then the other important part, of course, I wanted freedom, and I wanted passive income freedom where I don't have to work. Like right now, I do a lot of work, but I don't technically have to. I mean, most of my income comes in anyway, so I just keep building and growing my business versus trading time for money, which is very different. And or learning more ways of doing that branching out in other ways beyond publishing. So having that freedom is a great motivator, both financially and in your lifestyle.
Love it. Wow. Adventure, freedom, and fun. I love that's what you value. I think that it resonates with us so deeply, and we're so grateful. We'll be sure to include all the links to everything you've shared about today, because you're just a wealth of information. And you have also a really cool free training that you wanted to invite our listeners to. Can you share with us a little about your Dream Clients on Autopilot?
Yeah, it's a free webinar, and it goes a little bit more in depth about the publishing steps on how to do it. It goes over a 4-week plan on how to do it and what it takes. Similar to what we already talked about, but a little bit more in depth, and also addressing some more of the worries or objections people may have, or the misconceptions and all of that. So that can be found under dreamclientsonAutopilot.com, and you can just sign up there and then watch it right after. It's pre-recorded, so you can watch it anytime you want to. And that goes a little bit more deeper in what we already talked about today.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Did you have any final thoughts for our audience? Anybody listening to this? Maybe some inspiration to create more adventure, freedom, and fun in their own life?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. It's funny. Some of my students, like I said, I meet a lot of them in the Facebook group. They're all very, very serious. And some of them are university lecturers, or they're professionals, very successful. And they're all like so serious. Now they tell me, they go through all the exercises they're supposed to do. And I said, well, just relax, chill, have fun with it. That's the phrase I constantly use. And I had one student, she's a professor, and she finally did her first podcast. She was really as a guest. She was very worried about it. But she said, I kept thinking what you said, have fun with it. And I actually had fun with it now. So, don't make it so dreary. There will be disappointments, and it won't always go smoothly. Everybody goes through that. But if you really want this, just keep at it, get good training. I think that's another really key factor to speed things up. Learn from people who are really successful at this instead of like reinventing the wheel, and never lose your fun in it and the joy of life and why you're doing it. Because it's easy to get caught up.
Love that. Oh my gosh, so awesome. Such an important message, I think, when we are, so in love with our business and what we do. It's so easy to get tied down, sort of, by everything that we think that we have to get done every day. And you set such a beautiful example for entrepreneurs all over the world to really infuse their work with their life and do what you love at the same time. So thank you so, so much for sharing that with our audience and for being with us today.
And thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Yay.
Yeah. My favorite, and you being my favorite place on earth, on Hawaii. That's even more fun.
Yes, that means a lot coming from someone who's been to as many places as you have.
Right. It still is my favorite place on earth, I have to say. Yeah, it really is.
Well, we look forward to seeing you the next time you come through the islands.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
You take care.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
As always, we can continue the conversation in our tribe on Facebook. You can find that at bit.ly/BLE tribe.
And if you guys are ready to take action and level up your life and your business, jump on the phone with us and book a breakthrough call. You can find out all about our 8-week course and all of the ways that we support you and your business dreams at brokeasstobadass.com.